the Piri Reis map. In 1929, a strange map was found in the archives of the Topkapi Palace in Istanbul. It was drawn on gazelle skin, dated 1513, and signed by an Ottoman admiral named Piri Reis. But what made it shocking wasn't the date, it was what the map showed. The coastlines of South America, the exact shape of West Africa, and most mysteriously, the northern edge of Antarctica, drawn centuries before the continent was officially discovered. Even more impossible, it showed Antarctica without ice. Experts were stunned. How could a 16th century sailor have access to such precise geography? Piri Reis himself claimed he had copied from much older charts, maps said to be from the time of Alexander the Great, and even older still. The detail matched modern aerial surveys, suggesting the original source came from someone who saw these coasts before the last ice age ended. That would mean humans, or something else, mapped the world over 10,000 years ago. The US Navy studied it in the 1950s. Air Force cartographers confirmed the Antarctic coastline matched radar data hidden beneath miles of ice. That ice hasn't melted for millennia. So who drew it? Some claimed ancient mariners had global knowledge lost in time. Others whispered about a forgotten civilization, one advanced enough to map the planet. The map worked too well. It challenged everything about human history. If accurate, it meant that someone, long before Columbus, had sailed the world and left a record now buried under centuries of suppression. Soon after it was rediscovered, parts of the map went missing, pages torn, sections erased. The surviving piece hints at a world we were never meant to see, a glimpse of a lost cartographic legacy that once spanned the Earth. The Vinland map. In 1965, Yale University announced a discovery that could rewrite the story of the New World. A small parchment map, yellowed with age, seemed to show part of North America labeled Vinland. The map was dated around the year 1440, 50 years before Columbus set sail. If real, it proved that Europeans had reached America long before the Age of Discovery. The parchment showed Greenland as an island, centuries ahead of confirmed knowledge, and a landmass across the Atlantic that matched the coast of Newfoundland. It also included Latin notes describing Christian missions in Vinland, suggesting that Norse explorers not only arrived there, but settled and charted the region. At first, scholars called it a hoax. The ink seemed too modern, but others claimed the analysis was wrong, that the chemicals used to test it had contaminated the sample. New studies in the 1990s again declared it fake. Then, in 2021, Yale quietly admitted uncertainty. The map was stored away. Discussion faded, yet the mystery remains. How could someone in the 15th century have drawn North America so accurately? The answer may lie in lost Norse records, or something older. The Vikings spoke of strange lands to the west, rich with grapes and timber, long before Columbus. But this map showed more than rumor. It suggested knowledge passed down through secret channels, guarded by monasteries, hidden from kingdoms, erased by conquest. If true, the Vinland map worked too well. It threatened the heroic myth of European discovery. It meant history had already happened and been quietly rewritten. The map disappeared from public display soon after. To this day, no one agrees whether it's real or forged. But one thing is certain, it forced historians to admit that someone knew the shape of America before the story officially began. The Antarctica without ice map. Among the strangest ancient charts, one stands apart, a map of Antarctica drawn without ice. It's not a modern satellite image. It's an ancient reconstruction, said to have been copied from older sources, showing a landmass that matches the continent's true shape beneath the ice sheet. Scientists confirmed that the details align with seismic data collected in the 20th century, data impossible to know before radar. The mystery deepens when we learn that this Antarctica without ice image matches the same lower edge seen in the Piri Reis map. Coastlines, mountain ranges, and bays all line up with modern geography, but uncovered, as if viewed during a prehistoric age when the continent was temperate and habitable. That would place the original knowledge at least 6,000 years before recorded history. Who could have drawn such a thing? Mainstream historians say it's coincidence or misinterpretation, but explorers and cartographers who studied it privately believed it came from a lost civilization with global navigation skills. A people who surveyed the poles before the last ice age. It worked too well. It made too much sense. And that's what made it dangerous. If ancient cultures could map Antarctica without ice, then our entire understanding of early civilization collapses. It means humans, or someone else, had technology, ships, and science equal to or greater than what we achieved thousands of years later. The idea threatened the academic story of slow human progress, so it was buried under the label of pseudo-history. Museums ignored it, institutions called it a curiosity, and the data confirming it quietly disappeared into archives. Today, only fragments remain, copies of copies, whispers of an age when Earth's geography was known and remembered by a world that no longer exists. The ice may have buried the continent, but the truth was buried even deeper. The Fra Mauro map. In the year 1459, a Venetian monk named Fra Mauro completed a massive circular map unlike anything the world had ever seen. It covered the known world in extraordinary detail. Africa, Asia, Europe, drawn with strange precision. But what set it apart were the parts that shouldn't exist. Lands not yet discovered. Routes that crossed oceans long before Columbus, and descriptions of great ships sailing south around Africa to unknown regions. The Fra Mauro map reversed north and south, placing the world upside down from modern convention. Some say that was symbolic. Others believe it reflected a different way of seeing, one passed down from ancient sources. Fra Mauro wrote that he had based his work on older maps brought by sailors and people of great experience. Many of those sailors came from the East. Their stories spoke of lands beyond the Great Seas, places Europe had no record of. One note on the map describes Chinese junks sailing around the southern tip of Africa, decades before Western explorers. Another marks islands that seemed to fit South America's outline, though it was supposedly unknown. The map's accuracy and scope were centuries ahead of its time. It worked too well. It revealed a global world hidden under layers of medieval ignorance, a world connected long before Europe claimed it discovered anything that made it dangerous. To the church, to monarchs, to historians who depended on the idea of first discovery. After Fra Mauro's death, the original map vanished from public use. Copies survived, but the bold claims were written off as myth. Yet when modern scholars compared it with satellite images, many found its continental proportions surprisingly correct. Fra Mauro's masterpiece hinted at something forgotten, a network of knowledge that spanned oceans long before recorded history. It suggested that humanity once knew the world far better than we are taught to believe. The Babylonian world map. In 1882, archaeologists digging near Sippar, Iraq, uncovered a small clay tablet, cracked and faded. It looked ordinary, until they noticed the carvings. It was a map from Babylon, over 2,500 years old. It showed the world as a circle surrounded by a vast ocean, the very first world map ever found. But within its simple shape were secrets far deeper than it appeared. At the center was Babylon, the navel of the world. Around it were 7 regions, islands beyond the known world, each marked with cuneiform texts, describing strange lands filled with monstrous beings and divine forces. One inscription speaks of a place where the sun is not seen. Another describes a great mountain that reaches the heavens. Scholars called it myth, but what if it was memory? Some researchers noticed that the distances and directions on the tablet weren't random. They aligned with real geography: Persia, Egypt, the Mediterranean, even the edges of the Himalayas. The 7 islands may have represented ancient global awareness, fragments of an older cartographic tradition encoded in symbolic form. It worked too well. It showed that long before Greece, Rome, or Europe, people already imagined a spherical world with distant lands across the ocean. It hinted that the Babylonians knew Earth was round, knowledge supposedly rediscovered thousands of years later. The tablet was quietly stored in the British Museum. Few heard about it. Textbooks dismissed it as mythology, but the idea lingers that this tiny clay artifact might be a copy of something far older, passed down from an age of forgotten exploration. Its lines are rough, but its message is clear. Ancient people saw farther than we think. They mapped the world not just as it appeared, but as it truly was. The Cantino planosphere. In 1502, a stolen map changed everything. It was called the Cantino planosphere, named after an Italian spy, Alberto Cantino, who smuggled it out of Portugal, hidden inside a rolled-up cloth. What he had taken wasn't just a map, it was state secrets. It showed coastlines that should have been impossible to know. At that time, Portugal guarded its navigation data like a weapon. The age of discovery had just begun, and whoever controlled the maps controlled the world. Yet the Cantino planosphere showed the full shape of Africa. It showed Brazil, years before most Europeans even knew it existed. It even displayed parts of the Caribbean and North America, drawn with uncanny accuracy. The map was created by Portuguese cartographers using secret sea logs and many believe older charts inherited from lost sources. Its precision went far beyond the technology of its time. Modern comparisons revealed that some of its lines align closely with satellite data, something a 16th century sailor could never achieve. It worked too well. That's why it had to be stolen, hidden, and then denied. Portugal's monopoly on exploration was built on maps like this, maps that suggested someone else had already known these routes. The sudden jump in global navigation skill seemed almost supernatural. Too advanced, too fast. When Cantino brought the map to Italy, he hoped to sell it to rival powers, but the reaction was silence. The knowledge was too sensitive. It implied that the Portuguese discoveries weren't discoveries at all, just rediscoveries. The document vanished for centuries and resurfaced only in 1856. Its details still baffle historians. Whoever first mapped those coasts saw more of the world than any explorer of the era. It remains one of the clearest signs that ancient global knowledge didn't vanish. It was inherited, used, and carefully hidden. The Zeno map. In 1558, a Venetian nobleman named Niccolò Zeno published a map that stunned Europe. It showed lands across the North Atlantic, Greenland, Iceland, even parts of what looked like North America, drawn with shocking accuracy. But there was a problem. According to history, no European had mapped those places yet. Zeno claimed the chart was copied from letters and journals written by his ancestors, the Zeno brothers, who had supposedly sailed across the Atlantic in the 1300s. Their voyage described islands, icebergs, and coastlines unknown to the world for centuries. The map even included a large island labeled Friesland and a coast west of Greenland that resembled Labrador. For generations, scholars called it a fake. They said the Zeno brothers never existed, or if they did, their voyage was legend. But when modern researchers compared the Zeno map with satellite data, they found something strange. Its depiction of Greenland's western coast and the shape of the Faroe Islands were surprisingly accurate. Details no 16th century geographer could have invented. It worked too well. It suggested that someone had already crossed the Atlantic long before Columbus. Some historians even suspect it drew from Norse records or ancient navigational charts, passed down secretly through medieval guilds. If true, it would mean that knowledge of the Americas existed quietly for centuries, hidden within family archives, monasteries, or royal collections. But the map threatened national pride and religious control. It blurred the neat timeline of discovery, so it was discredited, dismissed, and forgotten. For centuries, the Zeno map sat in obscurity, a relic of an uncomfortable truth that history might have been carefully edited. Today, few mention it, but its quiet precision still whispers of forgotten travelers who mapped the edge of the world and of truths that were erased to protect a story that was easier to believe. The Kangnido map. In 1402, in the royal court of Korea, scholars completed a map that defied time. It was called the Kangnido, and it showed the world with an accuracy no one could explain. Asia was perfectly proportioned. Africa's shape extended far south, hundreds of years before Europeans explored it. Even the Mediterranean and parts of the Middle East were drawn in clear, confident lines. The map predated the European age of discovery by nearly a century. Yet it revealed knowledge that should have been impossible for a 15th century Asian kingdom to possess. Korea had never sailed around Africa. It had never reached Europe. And yet, the continents fit together almost perfectly. Historians believe the Kangnido was compiled from older Chinese and Islamic maps. But where did those maps come from? Some researchers suggest they were copies of even more ancient charts passed down through trade routes and royal archives. The precision hints at something global, a memory of the Earth's shape preserved through civilizations that supposedly never met. It worked too well. It broke the illusion that medieval Asia was isolated. It showed that knowledge had moved freely across continents, long before Western empires claimed to unite the world. The map's existence meant that advanced cartography wasn't born in Europe. It was remembered there. Soon after, the Kangnido quietly disappeared from political discussion. The world powers of the time, both East and West, had no reason to promote a document that proved ancient global awareness. Only a few copies survived, buried in libraries, their details fading from public consciousness. Modern comparisons reveal that the map's proportions rival those made centuries later with telescopes and compasses. Whoever first mapped those lands didn't just guess, they knew. The Kangnido reminds us that human history may not be a straight line of progress, but a circle of rediscovery, where each empire inherits pieces of a world once fully known. The orontius finaeus map. In 1531, a French cartographer named Orontius Finaeus unveiled a world map that shouldn't exist. It was beautiful, precise, and deeply wrong, at least according to history. The reason? It showed the entire coastline of Antarctica centuries before its official discovery. Drawn on parchment and covered in Latin inscriptions, the map displays a southern continent with mountain ranges, rivers, and bays, all drawn as if the land were free of ice. When scientists later compared it to modern seismic data, they found uncanny accuracy. Beneath Antarctica's ice, the land truly looks like what Finaeus drew. So how could a 16th century scholar know this? Finaeus himself claimed his chart came from ancient sources passed to him by unknown navigators. Some suspect he had access to secret libraries of old maps, relics from lost civilizations, or archives kept by the church. Others believe he simply compiled fragments from older charts, many of which also showed a southern continent with alarming precision. It worked too well. It suggested that someone, thousands of years before, had already mapped the world's poles. The accuracy was too much to ignore. If true, it meant humans once sailed around a planet very different from the one we think we know. When questions arose, the map quietly vanished from public display. Historians dismissed it as coincidence. The records of how Finaeus obtained his data disappeared. What remained was a haunting image of an ice-free world, drawn by a man who should never have known what lay beneath. Centuries later, even NASA analysts have admitted the resemblance between Finaeus's Antarctica and radar-mapped topography is unsettling. Some see it as proof of advanced pre-Ice Age navigation. Others call it a warning that our civilization, like the one that came before, may one day vanish and be rediscovered. The Orontius Finaeus map stands as a silent accusation someone had been here before us. The Book of Thoth star map. Among Egypt's countless lost texts, one stands out as pure legend. The Book of Thoth, said to contain the secrets of the gods, it was believed to grant anyone who read it mastery over earth, sky, and the underworld. Most think it was myth. But fragments found in later writings hint at something else, that it once held maps, not of lands or oceans, but of the heavens themselves. Temple carvings in Dendera and Edfu show strange celestial diagrams, constellations that predate Greek astronomy, star clusters unknown to modern science, and precise alignments that mark solstices and planetary cycles. These symbols were not decorative. They were instructions. When overlaid on the night sky, they form an ancient star map, one that seems to track the motion of stars thousands of years before recorded observation. Some researchers believe the Book of Thoth wasn't a single scroll but a body of forbidden knowledge. Astronomy, geometry, and cosmic alignment passed through secret priesthoods. It worked too well. It revealed how the ancients measured time, predicted floods, and aligned temples to specific stars, knowledge that implied science far beyond what official history allows. The priests of Thoth were said to guard this wisdom fiercely. When invaders came, Persians, Greeks, Romans, the scrolls vanished. Some were hidden in underground chambers, others destroyed. What survived was encoded in symbols on temple ceilings and sarcophagi, protected by myth. Those carvings still match real astronomical positions, exact to fractions of a degree. Whoever made them wasn't guessing. They were observing. And if the Book of Thoth truly existed, it may have been the earliest attempt to chart not Earth, but the structure of the cosmos itself. It worked too well, and for that, it disappeared. What humanity lost wasn't just a map, but a blueprint of how the ancients saw the universe alive, ordered and far older than we dare to remember.